Groom's mom caught in the act sabotaging wedding. When she walked in and saw that awful woman writhing around with her wedding dress, she could barely believe her eyes. She'd put up with her demands, endless nitpicking, and personal insults for months. This was the very last straw. What she'd been caught doing was so disturbing that it put an end to all the bride's wedding plans. But what could the future mother-in-law have done that was so terrible? Every woman hopes to have a happy and healthy relationship with their future mother-in-law. Tracy Rhodes was no different. After dating for a year, the love of her life, Rick, finally proposed. Of course, Tracy said yes and happily began with the wedding preparations. Everything seemed to be falling into place in the year leading up to her big day. But Tracy had no idea that a certain someone was determined to get in the way. Naturally, Tracy had dreamed about her wedding dress since she was a little girl. It was her day, after all, and she wanted to look perfect. She was smitten with one particular dress with a gorgeous, sheer back and beautiful beading detail. Even though the price came to a whopping $11,000, she dipped into her savings and ordered it from Gali Alahi of a prestigious and world-renowned designer of luxury bridal gowns. Of course, she never imagined that this dress would be at the center of an incident that ultimately ended her wedding. Rick and Tracy wanted their wedding to be a unique and memorable occasion. They agreed that, instead of holding the ceremony close to home, they wanted to splash out and have a destination wedding. "We're planning to be married in December in Colombia, and of course, I'm beyond pumped," Tracy wrote on Reddit. "It's going to be a destination wedding for us, and I was very happy that I was able to talk him into having one." But when Gina, Rick's mother, heard about it, she couldn't help herself. Gina immediately made it very clear that she wasn't on board with Tracy and Rick's plans to get married so far away from home. She made a point of complaining about the fact that no one speaks English in Colombia, and then went out of her way to criticize their choice. She complained about every aspect of the wedding, from safety to how much it would cost their guests to get there. Although her complaints seemed valid on the surface, Tracy was beginning to think that Gina was concerned about more than just their wedding plans. Tracy was beginning to suspect that there was no pleasing her future mother-in-law. She had a feeling that Gina would have found a way to oppose her wedding plans, no matter the location. It was no secret that Gina and Tracy had never really seen eye to eye. "I always knew that she wasn't really my biggest fan," Tracy confessed. "She's polite and very fake-friendly." But Tracy was learning that it wasn't just a personality clash that was driving her future mother-in-law's behavior. At the root of Tracy and Gina's problematic dynamic was Rick, who regards both women as the most important people in his life. Tracy noticed fairly early on that the relationship between Rick and his mother was rather unusual. "She'll do things like sit on my fiancé's lap, or tuck his hair behind his ear, and cut his food for him," she wrote. "On one occasion I actually saw her actually feed him, in public." For Tracy, getting to the bottom of the issue between Gina and herself before the wedding was very important. She didn't want any nasty surprises from her future mother-in-law before the day of her wedding. So, Tracy asked her fiancé to step in and have a word with his mother. Thankfully, it seemed to work and Gina ceased her strange behavior. After that, Tracy did her utmost to limit Gina's involvement in the wedding plans. Then she learned that Gina was complaining about being excluded to Rick behind her back. It wasn't long before the situation reached a boiling point. Tracy had a heart-to-heart with her fiancé, asking him to have a firm talk with his mother. She reiterated how important it was for them to set some boundaries. This put Rick in a difficult position, but he knew he had to do something to put his fiancée at ease. After all, she was the woman he was going to spend the rest of his life with. "To my fiancé's credit, once I told him that I thought that was beyond weird, it never happened again," she said. As far as she knew anyway. The day that saw Gina and Tracy's relationship completely blow up had started as an ordinary day. Tracy and Rick had invited Gina over to excitedly show her their new home. The house signified a new chapter in their lives, and they expected Gina to be excited for them too. However, as soon as she stepped in the front door, the criticism began, with most of it being directed at Tracy. As soon as she walked in, Gina only had nasty things to say. She began by chastising Tracy about the engagement ring that Rick had picked out for her. She gawked and gasped that there were children starving in Africa, and that people die for these rocks. According to her, the ring was over the top and a completely unnecessary waste of money. Tracy quickly corrected her, patiently explaining that the stone was, in fact, moissanite, far cheaper than a genuine diamond. But once Gina got started, there was no stopping her. Instead of being happy for the couple and their new home, she leveled scathing criticism at Tracy. Again, she was annoyed by how much money had been spent. She said that the house is an extravagant display of wealth, and just isn't us, Tracy recounted. Again, Tracy explained that the house was, in fact, a townhouse, and they had been able to purchase it at a bargain price. But even after all the venom, Gina wasn't done. After attacking Tracy's engagement ring and the couple's new home, Gina decided it was time to get personal. What she said next left Tracy reeling. In an extraordinary display of self-constraint, Tracy kept her cool when Gina made a snide comment about her weight. "You're getting fat," she spat. "You need to watch those calories so you can fit into your dress." Then, Gina proceeded to tell Tracy about how well her own diet was going, bragging about how svelte and chic she was going to look at the wedding. But of course, it didn't end there. Tracy was deeply offended by her future mother-in-law's comments, but this wasn't the first time Gina had stepped over the line. In fact, she made a point of constantly demeaning and berating Tracy in front of her son. Despite her obvious contempt for her son's fiancée, Gina made a show of keeping in contact with Tracy. But Tracy had always suspected that there was more to the whole situation. Rick, seeing that the animosity between his mother and fiancée was escalating, valiantly swooped in to defuse the situation. "Love, please help me put the bed in the spare bedroom together," he asked. Tracy, relieved to be taken away from Gina, happily complied, leaving her future mother-in-law to her own devices. But when Tracy walked into the master bedroom just half an hour later, she couldn't believe what Gina was doing. Tracy walked into the bedroom to use the ensuite bathroom and spied Gina doing something so audacious that she completely lost it. Lo and behold, her future mother-in-law was standing there, trying to squeeze into Tracy's wedding dress. "What do I find but future MIL struggling to yank my dress over her head, but was freaking stuck," she wrote on Reddit. "I blurted out 'what the heck,' and she immediately started stammering 'oh my god.' And from there, the situation only got worse. Tracy didn't have the time to even process what was happening to her beautiful Galia Lahav wedding gown. She ran over and ordered Gina to take it off immediately. But Gina was completely and utterly stuck. At that point, my number one concern was her tearing the sheer backing of my dress, so I rushed over to help her," she explained. Then, the unthinkable happened. After struggling to get Gina out of her expensive dress, the end results were completely devastating. It was all for nothing as she managed to scratch her way through the back of the dress and completely destroy the sheer material, Tracy wrote. She burst the side zipper of the dress and got a dirty footprint on the train. Tracy couldn't believe what was happening. Tracy stood and stared in utter disbelief. Her gorgeous gown was destroyed. All she could do was hold her face in her hands and try not to scream. After all the nastiness she had endured from her future mother-in-law, this was the worst thing she could have done. What had she been thinking? Furious and shaking, Tracy asked Gina why she had done it. If the situation had made her furious, the answer only enraged her more. Tracy demanded an answer. This time, Gina had gone too far. She responded that she was just trying to make sure the dress would fit me, because if the dress fit her, then it absolutely fit me too, she wrote. If it didn't fit her, then I obviously had some work to do. But the answer didn't check out. Tracy had obviously had the dress professionally fitted before she bought it. But what would Rick say about his mother's appalling behavior? Well, both Tracy and Rick were highly disturbed by the whole incident. Mostly because I doubt she was trying to just try on the dress for funsies. There was also a bouquet of dried flowers on the bed that wasn't there before, Tracy wrote. I think she was actually trying to pretend she was the bride, which for so many reasons is so wrong. But unfortunately, Gina's behavior only got worse from there. Now, it was more than reasonable for Tracy to expect Gina to pay for the damage she had done to the designer dress. But Tracy was in for another surprise. She hasn't offered to pay for any of the repairs to the dress. A section of the train is ripped, she vented on Reddit. I have no idea how much it's going to cost until I can get to the seamstress tomorrow. But even after all Gina had done that day, she still wasn't done. When Tracy confronted Gina about paying for the damage that she had done, she unbelievably tried to shift the blame onto Tracy. She said that she shouldn't have spent so much on a dress to begin with. In the meantime, in lieu of an apology, she's lecturing me on spending so much money on a wedding dress, Tracy wrote. Clearly, the trouble she had getting into the dress was a sign to get something less dramatic and ostentatious. That was the final straw for Tracy. She needed a plan. Tracy took to Reddit once more, but this time she was seeking legal advice. She asked the online community about whether it was feasible and reasonable for her to take legal action against her future mother-in-law. In her mind, she deserved some sort of compensation for the damage to her wedding dress. I know it's just a dress, but this goes beyond the dress, she wrote. Many users encouraged her to take action, but many shared their own opinions about Gina's shocking behavior. Soon enough, the Reddit post went viral, attracting many comments and reactions from the online community. This may be a bit scorched earth, but I would personally tell her that either she pays for the repairs, or she is uninvited, one person wrote. Many expressed their disgust at the incident. One person even claimed that what Gina did made them throw up. But was Tracy able to get some sort of justice? And did she end up getting the happy ending she deserved? After a couple of months of uncertainty, Tracy once again took to Reddit. Having previously asked Rick to tell Gina that she was uninvited to the wedding, Tracy later learned that he had caved in and gone back on his word. Although they have cancelled the wedding, the couple are still together and want to make it work. I want to be able to go the distance with him, but while she is in the picture I just don't think I can, she said. A few months passed and Tracy was ready to update Reddit users once again about the situation surrounding her fiancé's mother. One positive thing she was able to take away from the time that had passed was that Rick seemed to be keeping his distance from Gina, as promised. My fiancé has kept his end of the bargain, he's had no contact with FMIL, she wrote. How do I know? I'm religiously checking his accounts. However, things have also taken a turn for the worse. Tracy was also quick to share how Gina has continued to act inappropriately, in a variety of ways. For example, she is incessantly trying to contact Tracy. Some examples include missed calls during the early hours, finding nasty notes under her door and text messages. Fiancé and I typically go shopping on Wednesday nights, she wrote. Guess who was waiting for us in the parking lot at 7 p.m.? We didn't get out of the car after we saw her pacing around the entrance.